The 1970s produced some of the greatest music ever recorded, but it also produced songs nobody was supposed to take seriously. Novelty songs, comedy records, tracks built on jokes, characters, or absurd ideas. Songs critics laughed at, songs radio programmers didn't expect to last. And yet somehow these songs didn't just survive. They dominated charts, they crossed borders, they became global hits. These are 10 joke songs from the 70s that became worldwide phenomena. And we begin with one of the strangest #1 hits of the decade. Number 10, Granddad, Clive Dunn, 1970.
Now my days are gone.
In 1970, British television viewers already knew Clive Dunn. He wasn't a pop star. He wasn't a singer. He was an actor, best known for playing an elderly soldier on the sitcom Dad's Army. Then he released a song called Granddad. It sounded like a children's rhyme, a sentimental novelty tune built around an old man complaining about modern life. There was no edge, no ambition, no attempt at credibility. Critics dismissed it instantly. This wasn't rock. This wasn't pop. This wasn't music that mattered. And yet, something unexpected happened. Granddad went straight to #1 on the UK singles chart. It stayed there for 3 weeks. It sold over 1 million copies. It became one of the biggest British hits of the year. The appeal wasn't musical sophistication. It was familiarity. The song played on generational tension, old values versus modern youth, spoken in a friendly, humorous voice. Parents loved it. Children laughed at it. Grandparents felt seen. Radio embraced it because it felt harmless. Television promoted it because Dunn was already a beloved figure. The result was unavoidable. A novelty song with no pop ambitions became a cultural moment, but the success came with a cost. Granddad defined Clive Dunn permanently. No matter what else he did, he was now the man who sang that song. The joke outlived the performer, and in doing so it proved something uncomfortable. You didn't need youth. You didn't need rebellion. You didn't even need music credibility. Sometimes all you needed was a joke people recognized. Number 9, Chirpy, Chirpy, Cheep, Cheep, Middle of the Road, 1971. By 1971, pop music was supposed to be growing up. Rock was getting heavier. Lyrics were becoming political. Albums were being treated as art. Then a song called Chirpy, Chirpy, Cheep, Cheep arrived. It sounded like a nursery rhyme, built around nonsense syllables and a bouncing, childlike melody. Critics were horrified. This wasn't satire. It wasn't clever parody. It was pure bubblegum. And it worked. Chirpy, Chirpy, Cheep, Cheep went to #1 in the UK. It topped charts across Europe. It reached the top 10 in the United States. The song sold millions. Radio stations played it relentlessly. Children loved it instantly. Adults couldn't escape it. The band behind it, Middle of the Road, were a Scottish pop group originally aiming for credibility. That vanished overnight. This song rebranded them completely. They were no longer a pop band. They were a novelty act. The lyrics meant nothing. The hook meant everything. Critics accused the song of infantilizing pop music. They saw it as proof that commercial radio had abandoned standards. But radio didn't care. The melody was infectious. The chorus was impossible to forget. Chirpy, Chirpy, Cheep, Cheep crossed language barriers because it barely used language at all. That was its secret. It didn't need meaning. It didn't need depth. It only needed repetition. The joke became global. And once again, success came with a cost. Middle of the Road were never taken seriously again. Every song after this one existed in its shadow. The band made money. They toured internationally. They disappeared from critical conversation. Chirpy, Chirpy, Cheep, Cheep proved that pop didn't need intelligence to travel. It needed a hook children could sing, and adults couldn't stop hearing. Number 8, Moldy Old Dough, Lieutenant Pigeon, 1972. By 1972, novelty songs had already embarrassed pop music more than once. Then a band with one of the strangest names imaginable released a song that barely qualified as one. Moldy Old Dough had no real lyrics, no singer, no message. Just a wheezing, reedy keyboard melody played over a marching beat. The sound came from a modified organ. The player was Rob Woodward, whose mother played piano on the recording. Yes, his mother. Critics didn't know how to respond, so they didn't try. They dismissed it immediately. This wasn't rock. This wasn't pop. This was a musical gag stretched past its breaking point. Radio didn't care. The hook was strange. The rhythm was hypnotic. And once it got on air, it was impossible to escape. Moldy Old Dough went to #1 in the UK. It stayed there for 4 weeks. It charted across Europe. It reached the top 40 in the United States. A song with no lyrics became a global hit. Part of its appeal was novelty, but part of it was exhaustion. In an era filled with heavy messages, long solos, and political statements, this song offered nothing. No meaning, no opinion, no demands. It simply existed. That emptiness became the joke. Moldy Old Dough proved something uncomfortable. You could remove words, intent, and credibility, and still dominate the charts. All you needed was a sound people couldn't forget. Number 7, Gimme Dat Ding, The Pipkins, 1970. 1970, pop music was trying to prove it mattered. Albums were getting longer, lyrics were getting heavier, artists wanted to be taken seriously. Then, Gimme Dat Ding arrived and ignored all of that. A cartoon voice, a stuttering hook, a chorus that sounded like it belonged on children's television. There was no message, no metaphor, no attempt at credibility. Critics dismissed it instantly. This wasn't satire, it wasn't clever parody, it was novelty stripped down to instinct. And it worked. Gimme Dat Ding went to #1 in the United States. It topped charts internationally. It sold millions of copies. Radio embraced it because listeners reacted immediately. You didn't have to understand it. You just had to hear it once. The song felt ridiculous on purpose. That was the appeal. The Pipkins weren't built to last. They were assembled for the joke. Once the joke landed, the project was finished. There was no second act. The hit swallowed everything else. The band became a footnote. The song became the memory. Gimme Dat Ding exposed an uncomfortable truth. Pop didn't need meaning to travel. It needed a hook loud enough to overwrite thought. And once radio locked onto it, there was no escaping the joke. Number 6, Dead Skunk, Loudon Wainwright III, 1972.
Dead skunk in the middle of the road.
In 1972, Loudon Wainwright III was trying to be taken seriously. He was a folk songwriter. Sharp lyrics, dry humor, songs built on observation, not spectacle. Then he released Dead Skunk. It was a song about roadkill, a literal dead skunk in the middle of the road, told with cheerful delivery and a sing-along chorus. Dead skunk in the middle of the road. Critics were confused. This didn't sound like protest folk. It wasn't introspective. It wasn't poetic. It was a joke. Radio loved it. The chorus was simple. The imagery was absurd. Listeners laughed and remembered it instantly. Dead Skunk climbed into the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100. It became Wainwright's biggest hit by far, and that was the problem. The joke eclipsed everything else. Loudon Wainwright III had written dozens of intelligent, literate songs. Most people never heard them. To radio audiences, he became the Dead Skunk guy. The song's humor was gentle, but its impact was brutal. Critics struggled to defend it. Fans of serious folk music felt embarrassed by it. Wainwright himself grew uncomfortable with its legacy. The song followed him for decades. Every interview referenced it. Every introduction circled back to it. Dead Skunk wasn't meant to define a career, but novelty doesn't ask permission. It chooses you. The song proved that even clever humor can become a trap once radio decides what you're known for. Number 5, Short People, Randy Newman, 1977.
Short people got no reason.
When Randy Newman released Short People in 1977, confusion arrived first. The melody was upbeat. The groove felt playful. The lyrics sounded cruel. Short People got no reason. Listeners took it at face value. Radio played it relentlessly. The song climbed to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Requests poured in. Then the backlash hit. People accused Newman of mocking an entire group. Advocacy groups protested. Radio stations received angry phone calls. What many listeners missed was the joke. Newman wasn't attacking short people. He was parodying bigotry itself. The narrator was the villain. That nuance didn't survive radio rotation. Satire requires attention. Top 40 radio doesn't allow it. The chorus became the song. The irony disappeared. Short People turned into a literal insult set to music. Newman tried to explain. In interviews, he stressed the satirical intent. It didn't matter. Once a joke escapes context, it mutates. The song followed him everywhere. Every serious composition he wrote after was measured against it. Film scores, political songs, sharp social commentary, all overshadowed by one misunderstood hit. Critics appreciated Newman's intellect. The public remembered the punchline. Short people proved that satire can backfire spectacularly when the audience laughs for the wrong reason. It wasn't Newman's smartest song, but it became his most famous, and like many joke hits, it never really let him move on. Number 4, Kung Fu Fighting, Carl Douglas, 1974. In 1974, martial arts movies were everywhere. Bruce Lee had turned Kung Fu into a global obsession. Cinemas were packed. Television reruns kept the trend alive. Then a song appeared that reduced the entire phenomenon to a hook. Kung Fu Fighting. The lyrics were simplistic. The imagery was cartoonish. The rhythm borrowed heavily from disco. The song was written in minutes, recorded as a B-side, never intended to matter, radio decided otherwise. Kung Fu Fighting exploded. It hit number 1 in the United States. It topped charts around the world. It sold over 10 million copies. Critics winced. The song treated Asian culture like a novelty costume. Kung Fu became a punchline. Exoticized. Simplified. Repeated endlessly. But nuance didn't survive popularity. Audiences didn't analyze it, they sang it. The chorus was irresistible. The rhythm was universal. The title said everything listeners needed to know. For Carl Douglas, the success was immediate and final. The hit consumed his career. No follow-up could escape its shadow. He became synonymous with the joke. Over time, the song aged awkwardly. What once felt playful began to feel uncomfortable. Cultural context changed. The joke hardened. Kung Fu Fighting didn't fail because it was bad. It failed because it froze a cultural moment into caricature. Radio loved it. History questioned it. And that tension is why it still lingers. Number 3, Convoy, C.W. McCall, 1975.
On the 6th of June in a Kenworth pulling logs.
In 1975, America became obsessed with truckers, CB radios, long highways, rebellion framed as freedom. Then Convoy turned that obsession into a song. It wasn't sung, it was spoken. A rhythmic monologue filled with CB slang, truckers talking to each other in code, a rolling story set to a country beat. The concept sounded absurd. Critics dismissed it immediately. This wasn't music. It was novelty narration with a chorus. Radio didn't hesitate. Convoy shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It crossed from country radio to pop radio. It sold millions. Listeners loved decoding the slang. They loved the imagery. They loved the idea of outlaws on wheels. The song became more than a hit. It became a trend. CB radios sold out nationwide. Truck stop slang entered mainstream culture. A Hollywood movie followed, all of it driven by a joke record. C.W. McCall wasn't a real trucker. He was an advertising executive. The song was written as satire. That context disappeared instantly. Radio audiences took it literally. The myth replaced the joke. Critics were irritated. They saw Convoy as a gimmick masquerading as culture, a novelty record hijacking the charts. And yet it worked. The song captured a specific moment when Americans wanted escape without confrontation. No politics, no introspection, just motion. Convoy didn't last because it was deep. It lasted because it turned lifestyle into entertainment. Once the trend passed, so did the song's credibility. But the hit remains a reminder. Sometimes a joke doesn't just reflect culture. It becomes culture. Number 2, The Streak, Ray Stevens, 1974.
Boogity, boogity. There you go. Boogity, boogity.
In early 1974, America developed a strange obsession. Streaking, running naked through public places for attention, rebellion, or just laughter. Television news covered it seriously. Universities tried to stop it. Parents didn't know how to explain it. Ray Stevens turned it into a song. The streak wasn't subtle. It wasn't clever. It wasn't pretending to be anything else. It was a comedy sketch set to music, a fake news report, a panicked narrator, a mother yelling, "Don't look, Ethel." Critics didn't need time to decide. They hated it immediately. This wasn't satire. It was slapstick novelty exploiting a fad. Radio stations didn't care. The streak went straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It sold millions. It dominated airwaves for weeks. The joke worked because it mirrored real life. Listeners recognized the absurdity. They were already laughing at the phenomenon. The song just packaged it neatly. Stevens understood timing. He released the song at the peak of the craze, not before, not after. That precision made it unavoidable. And yet that's exactly why it matters. The streak isn't remembered as music. It's remembered as documentation, a frozen snapshot of a cultural joke that briefly took over the entire country. When the laughter faded, so did the respect. But the hit never disappeared. It remains one of the most successful novelty records of the decade. A reminder that popularity doesn't ask permission. Number 1, Disco Duck, Rick Dees and his Cast of Idiots, 1976.
Moving my feet to the disco beat.
By 1976, disco was everywhere. It filled nightclubs. It dominated radio. It terrified rock critics. Then a cartoon duck showed up. Disco Duck was born as a joke. Rick Dees was a radio DJ in Memphis, parodying disco's excess live on air. A Donald Duck-style voice, disco cliches, pure mockery. The record was never meant to escape the studio, but radio audiences loved it. The novelty crossed formats. Pop stations played it. Disco stations played it. Even rock stations couldn't avoid it. Disco Duck went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. That moment broke something. To critics, this wasn't just a bad song. It was proof that disco had lost control of itself. A parody had become the biggest hit in America. While serious artists were being ignored, rock writers called it humiliating. Disco purists called it betrayal. Record executives quietly celebrated the sales. Rick Dees was fired from his radio station for releasing the song without approval. It didn't matter. The record sold millions. A sequel followed, merchandise appeared, but credibility never came. Disco Duck became shorthand for everything wrong with the era. Corporate, disposable, designed for laughs, not longevity.